They laughed when a 16-year-old boy raised his hand and bid on 12 rusted bridge beams at the Dawes County Equipment Sale in Chadron, Nebraska, on the 14th of February 2018. Not cruel laughter. More the sound a room makes when something unexpected happens, and nobody has decided yet what to think about it. The beams were listed as scrap. The county had priced them at $160 for the lot. The boy paid $440. 22 months later, when Pumpkin Creek ran its banks and cut the Whitmore Road at the low crossing by the Ellers place, every farm in that draw was stranded for 11 days. Every farm except one. This is the kind of story my father would tell. If yours did too, this channel is for you. Subscribe, and we'll keep telling them. The sale was held in the parking area behind the Dawes County Road Barn off Highway 20, which is not a place designed for comfort in February. There were folding tables and a gas heater on a wheeled cart, and about 30 people standing in the cold with their hands in their pockets. Most of them there for a 2003 John Deere 6420 utility tractor in Lot 3, and a set of used blade attachments in Lot 11. The bridge beams were Lot 14. They had come off the old Pumpkin Creek low-water crossing on Whitmore Road, replaced the prior October with a corrugated steel culvert system the county had contracted out to a crew from Scottsbluff. The beams themselves were W831 wide-flange steel, 24 feet long, rolled sometime around 1961 by a mill whose name was stamped into the web of each one in letters that had mostly rusted past reading. The county engineer had tagged them unsalvageable. His report said the surface oxidation had progressed to a depth that made load certification impractical. He recommended disposal as ferrous scrap at the recycling facility in Alliance. He had been an engineer for 19 years, and he was not a careless man. The boy's name was Travis Enright. He was standing near the back of the crowd with his grandfather, a man named Lyle Enright, who had farmed about 520 acres of hay ground and dryland corn in the Pumpkin Creek drainage since 1981. Lyle was 64 and had a bad hip and a good eye and very little to say in most situations. He had brought Travis to the sale because Travis had asked to come. Travis had asked to come because he had been thinking about a creek crossing for 8 months. The Enright place sat back from Whitmore Road about a third of a mile, reached by a private 2-track that crossed a seasonal tributary of Pumpkin Creek near the property line. Lyle had bridged that tributary in 1994 with a pair of 12-inch corrugated culverts and some compacted fill. The culverts had done the job for 23 years, which is longer than most culverts do the job in creek country. But by 2017, they were showing the kind of fatigue that doesn't announce itself clearly, some settling on the south end. A soft spot in the fill that you noticed if you were driving slowly and paying attention. Travis had noticed it in the spring of 2017 when he was moving a hay swather across and felt the front axle drop about 2 inches more than it should have and come back up. He had not said anything to Lyle at the time. He had gone home and thought about it. He spent the better part of that summer reading, not schoolwork. He was a decent student at Chadron High, but that is not the reading being described here. He read through a collection of materials his grandfather kept in a wooden filing cabinet in the shop. Old Oosta Farm bulletins, a water management guide from the Nebraska Extension Service dated 1977, and 3 spiral notebooks in Lyle's handwriting that covered 36 years of observations about the property. Water table, frost depth, which draws flooded in which years and how high, how many days before the ground dried enough to move equipment. One notebook had a page near the back that listed every time Lyle had been unable to get equipment or trucks in or out of the farm due to water. There were 11 entries between 1981 and 2016. The longest cutoff was 14 days in the spring of 1993. The shortest was 4 days in 2008. The median was 8. At the bottom of the page, in the cramped handwriting Lyle used when he was putting something down for reference rather than for reading, were the words, "The road in is always the problem. Everything else waits." Travis read that line several times. He also read the extension guide section on private crossings, which included load tables for various beam sizes and span lengths, and a worked example using W831 wide flange steel at a 20-foot span that came out to a safe load of about 28,000 pounds for a two-beam configuration, or roughly the weight of a loaded grain truck on its rear axle group. He read that section twice and then went out and measured the tributary crossing with a tape measure and wrote down 21. 5 feet between the banks at normal water. He did the arithmetic on graph paper. The numbers worked if he used the full 24-foot beams for bearing length and kept his footings back from the bank edge. He did not tell Lyle about any of this. He kept it in a folder in his room and looked at it occasionally and added to it when he learned something new, which is not behavior most 16-year-olds engage in voluntarily. But Travis Enright was not most 16-year-olds in the respects that mattered here. When the county posted the surplus sale in the Chadron newspaper in January of 2018, Travis read the item carefully. W831, 24 feet, 12 beams. He read it again. He went to the shop and got out his graph paper. 6 beams in 2 parallel sets of 3 gave him a deck width of just over 8 feet, which was enough for anything on the farm. The remaining 6 beams were extra, a reserve or material for something else later, or nothing. What mattered was the 6. The county had stamped the scrap value of the lot at $160 based on current ferrous prices at the Alliance facility, which worked out to about 13 cents a pound at 1,200 pounds per beam. Travis had looked up the going rate for used structural steel at a salvage yard in Rapid City that sold reclaimed wide flange and found that W831 in comparable condition was priced at 28 to 35 cents a pound if you were buying it. He worked that out to something between $672 and $840 for the same 12 beams if purchased as used structural steel rather than scrap iron. He had $490 in a savings account at First National Bank of Chadron. He told Lyle he thought they ought to go to the sale. Lyle drove. He did not ask many questions on the way down, which was characteristic of him. He asked what Travis was interested in, and Travis told him about the beams and the tributary crossing and the load tables and the graph paper, going through it in the organized way he had prepared for. Lyle listened and did not say anything for a stretch of highway. Then he said the culverts were probably fine for a while yet. Travis said probably. Lyle asked what he was planning to bid. Travis said up to $490. Lyle said that was a lot of money for scrap iron. Travis said he thought it was a fair price for structural steel. Lyle looked at the road. He did not say anything else about it. At the sale, when the auctioneer, a compact man named Gary Blunt who had been calling Dawes County sales since 2002, reached Lot 14 and read the description and opened at $25. The 2 men nearest to Travis made a comment to each other that he heard part of, but not all of. The tone was clear enough. A man in a canvas Carhartt, who was standing to Travis's left, looked at him with the particular expression adults use when a young person is about to make a mistake with their own money. He was not wrong to have the expression. Most 16-year-olds bidding $440 on 12 rusted bridge beams at a county surplus sale are making a mistake. He had no reason to think this one was different. Travis raised his hand at $25. A scrap dealer from Alliance came in at $50. Travis went to $150. The scrap dealer paused and went to $200, which was already above the county's estimated scrap value, meaning he was either operating on different price information or not paying close attention. Travis went to $350. The scrap dealer looked at him and went to $390. Travis went to $440, and the scrap dealer put his hand back in his pocket, and that was the end of it. Lyle wrote the check. He had not agreed to write the check beforehand, but he wrote it. Gary Blunt noted the sale in his book and moved to Lot 15, which was a set of used highway signs, and generated no interest from anyone. They borrowed a flatbed trailer from a neighbor named Ron Vesley and moved the beams out to the Enright place over 2 trips the following weekend. Travis had already arranged to rent a skid steer from the equipment dealer in Chaudron for a Saturday in March, when the ground would be firm enough to work near the creek without rutting. He had priced the concrete for footings and talked to a ready-mix company in Chaudron about a small order. He had drawn the footing design himself, referencing a concrete manual his ag teacher had loaned him. He had called the county about setbacks and been told by a clerk that private crossings on private drainage tributaries didn't require a permit, which was the answer he had expected but wanted confirmed. The installation took 2 Saturdays in March and part of a third. Travis did the footing work himself with help from a school friend named Marcus Dull, whose family farmed over near Whitney. They set the beams in pairs, 3 sets of 2, using the skid steer to lower them onto the footings. Travis had pre-cut the oak decking at his shop at home, and they bolted it down with carriage bolts and construction adhesive. When it was done, Travis drove his grandfather's 2009 Ford F-350 across it empty, then with a full load of hay bales, then with the bale loader attached, watching for deflection. There was none he could see or measure with a straightage. The whole crossing cost $1,840. That included the beams, the concrete, the decking lumber from a mill over in Hot Springs, the hardware, and the equipment rental. Lyle looked at the finished structure and walked across it on foot, and did not say much. He asked how Travis had come up with the footing dimensions. Travis showed him the concrete manual and the graph paper. Lyle looked at the graph paper for a while. He said the bearing areas looked sufficient. That was all he said, which Travis understood to mean that he thought the work was right. In March of 2020, a slow-moving low-pressure system tracked across the northern panhandle and left 8 inches of rain over 4 days on ground that was already at field capacity from a wet winter. Pumpkin Creek came up fast. The low crossing on Whitmore Road went under on the morning of March 21st. The county posted the road closed by noon. It stayed closed for 11 days. The Enright farm was the 3rd property back from the road. In a normal spring, Lyle used the Whitmore Road crossing as his primary access. It was paved and wide and easy on equipment. But on March 21st, Travis was home from school. He had graduated the prior spring and was taking an ag business course at Chadron State. And he drove the half-mile out to the road and saw the water over the pavement, and turned around and drove back in on the 2-track, over the tributary crossing, without any difficulty. The tributary was running high and fast under the beams. The deck was dry. Over the next 11 days, Lyle moved hay on that crossing. A vet came in to look at a heifer with a difficult labor. A propane truck made a delivery. Travis drove in and out to Chaudron twice, for parts and once for groceries. The neighboring farms on Whitmore Road were not as fortunate. The Ellers family, 2 properties down, had a calf operation and lost access to their winter pasture for 9 of those 11 days. A farm equipment dealer could not deliver a part that was needed for a corn planter. One family had to arrange for someone on the other side of the road closure to pick up their mail and leave it at a junction point. After the road reopened, a neighboring farmer named Dell Stansberry drove over to the Enright place and asked Lyle how they had been getting in and out. Lyle told him about the tributary crossing. Dell asked who had engineered it. Lyle said his grandson had. Dell asked how old Travis had been when he built it. Lyle said 17. Dell stood there a moment and then said that was something. Lyle told Travis about the conversation later, in the way he told most things, matter-of-factly, without decoration, as an item of information. Travis said he was glad the crossing had held. Lyle said it had held fine. He said he'd thought about it during the flood, standing at the kitchen window when the rain was still coming down on the fourth night, looking in the direction of the tributary he couldn't see in the dark. He said he hadn't been worried. Exactly, he just found himself thinking about it. The spiral notebook with the 11 entries in it is still in the filing cabinet in the shop. Travis knows where it is. The line at the bottom of the page, "The road in is always the problem, everything else waits," is still there in Lyle's handwriting, cramped and definite, the way a man writes something down when he means for it to be found. The beams are still there too, carrying whatever comes across them. In a flood year, that is everything.